All right, let's just dive right into this explainer, where we are going to unpack the wildly fascinating 50-year history of generative AI in the art world. Now, if you've been anywhere near the internet lately, you'd probably think AI art just kind of fell out of the sky a couple of years ago, right? Just instantly sparking these massive debates and completely upending the creative industries. But the actual truth? The story of human-machine collaboration goes way deeper, it's much richer, and frankly, it's a lot more complex than a simple man versus machine narrative. But look, before we even touch today's chaotic headlines, we've got to start with the fundamental philosophical question that has literally haunted this technology since the 1960s. Can a piece of code actually be creative, or is it just mimicking the humans who programmed it? To figure that out, we have to look back at the pioneers who first saw computers not just as giant calculators, but as actual creative partners. So here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be hitting 6 key eras: the AI art explosion, Harold Cohen and Aaron, the GAN generation, the diffusion revolution, the modern AI backlash, and finally, redefining human creativity. Section 1. The AI art explosion, contextualizing the current cultural moment. It really feels like AI art appeared completely overnight, doesn't it? Suddenly, boom, highly detailed, synthesized images are absolutely everywhere. But to truly grasp this cultural explosion, we need to take a step back, because the reaction we're seeing right now, it's actually a very familiar pattern in the history of art and tech. Think about it like arguing whether photography is art in 1850. Just like the camera disrupted painting over a century ago, AI is forcing us to entirely rethink what it even means to create. Back in the 1850s, purists were arguing that photography took zero skill, that a machine was doing all the heavy lifting. Fast forward to today, and we universally recognize photography as a profound artistic medium. And a lot of technologists argue that generative AI is going through those exact same growing pains right now. Moving on to Section 2, Harold Cohen and Aaron, the forgotten pioneer of the 1960s. So let's jump to our first major technological leap, starting with an abstract painter named Harold Cohen. He decided to do something crazy at the time: teach a machine how to draw. Back in the late 60s, Cohen was already a really successful artist, but he got hooked on this idea of computational creativity. He didn't want to just digitize his existing paintings, he wanted to know if a computer could actually originate art itself. And look at this progression over the decades. In 1968, Cohen starts programming Aaron. By the 70s, it's generating abstract patterns. By the 80s and 90s, Aaron evolved from plotting simple shapes into operating a physical robotic arm that mixed its own fabric dyes. Working out of UC San Diego and later Stanford's AI lab, Cohen literally dedicated 5 decades to this project. Aaron ended up physically drawing human figures and complex foliage using specialized robotic turtles and painting arms that Cohen built himself. Now, the crucial takeaway here is that Cohen wasn't just scanning in existing work. He built a symbolic, rule-based system where the machine made its own compositional decisions. He wrote deterministic code teaching the machine the rules of drawing, sure, but the final output? Always a surprise. Aaron was essentially an autonomous creative entity. In fact, it was so autonomous that the Whitney Museum recently featured a major retrospective of Aaron's work, completely cementing its place in art history. Section 3. The GAN generation, the 2014 breakthrough in synthetic vision. Fast forward to 2014. The invention of generative adversarial networks, or GANs, completely shifted digital art from just modifying existing images to synthesizing entirely new ones out of thin air. This was a massive leap from Harold Cohen's rule-based code. And honestly, we really need to point out a fascinating historical reality here. Digital artists have actually been relying on early versions of this AI for years. Long before the current backlash, creatives were happily integrating early AI tools like Deep Dream, algorithmic upscalers like Waifu2X, and Photoshop's neural filters right into their daily workflows. The secret behind this massive leap was essentially a minimax game, pitting 2 neural networks against each other. It's a game of cat and mouse, pushing the system towards startling photorealism. You have a generator synthesizing an image from random noise, and a discriminator trying to guess if it's real or fake. Over time, that generator gets incredibly good at faking reality. This fundamentally changed how machines see. And that adversarial math led directly to 2018, when an algorithmically generated print called Portrait of Edmund de Bellamy absolutely shocked the world by selling for nearly $500,000 at Christie's, $432,500. It was created using an open-source GAN model trained on 15,000 historical portraits. The art world was totally divided on this. Some called it a watershed moment, others called it a pure gimmick. But you know what? It proved without a doubt that machine-synthesized imagery held immense cultural and financial value. Section 4. The Diffusion Revolution, Iterative Noise and Massive Scale. By the early 2020s, the somewhat volatile GAN architecture got largely superseded by a much more stable, incredibly powerful approach known as diffusion. If GANs were a breakthrough, diffusion models were an absolute paradigm shift. This is what gave us the text-to-image magic we're all using today. This step-by-step process allowed tools like Stable Diffusion and Google's Imagine to perfectly align natural language prompts with highly complex visual concepts. Instead of fighting a discriminator like in the GAN days, a diffusion model learns by taking a crystal-clear image, slowly destroying it with static noise, and then figuring out how to reverse that process to pull a perfect image back out of pure static. Pair that with massive language models, and suddenly you can just type exactly what you want to see. Today, these modern diffusion models are seamlessly integrated into digital workspaces. And to really understand this shift, we have to address the elephant in the room regarding asset reuse. Traditional digital art has always relied heavily on reusing existing assets. Just think about 3D asset packs, photo bashing, custom algorithmic brushes, right? In many ways, modern diffusion models are just the ultimate evolution of this asset reuse. They synthesize the collective patterns of human art into one massive, unified digital toolset. And the adoption rate? Absolutely staggering. 87% of game developers are already integrating AI to augment things like level design and conceptualization. I mean, when you can slash production times from weeks down to days and cut costs by up to 90%, it is no wonder that industries from fashion retail all the way to video game development are leaning in so hard. Section 5. The Modern AI Backlash, the Philosophical and Legal Collision. But of course, this lightning-fast adoption has triggered some intense economic and ethical pushback across the creative industries. The sheer speed of these diffusion models improving has caused a massive collision between technology and copyright law. Let's look at the artist's perspective here, because there are very real concerns about job displacement and the unauthorized scraping of copyrighted works. This has led to active resistance and massive federal lawsuits. A recent survey showed over 70% of concept artists are seeing fewer jobs out there, and some are fighting back technologically. They're using tools like Nightshade to subtly alter their digital images. That way, if an AI scrapes their art, it actively poisons the model's understanding of visual concepts. Conversely, technologists argue that AI is simply a new medium, one that democratizes visual expression and creates entirely new collaborative roles rather than completely replacing human intent. And this is where we see some really fascinating layers to this debate. A pro-AI perspective points out what they see as a glaring contradiction in the anti-AI stance. They note that many digital artists who actively reject modern generative AI will still happily use older AI-driven tools, things like automated layer rendering, content-aware fill, and neural filters. Tools that fundamentally do the exact same thing. They rely on algorithms trained on external data to bypass manual execution. So to technologists, diffusion models aren't destroying art. They're just the next logical step in a very long lineage of digital assistance. Which brings us to Section 6, Redefining Human Creativity, the Future of Authorship. Let's look at how this builds a completely new paradigm for digital authorship. If we accept that these models are here to stay, how do we use them to expand rather than limit our own potential? As pioneering tools like Artbreeder have shown us, these systems can function a lot less like automated replacement tools and much more like an impossible camera that lets artists discover totally uncharted visual territory. In platforms like Artbreeder, users are crossbreeding images, exploring this vast latent space of possibilities to find beautiful, complex, surreal outputs that they literally couldn't have imagined on their own. It becomes a true collaboration between human curation and machine synthesis. So, as we wrap up this 50-year history of AI art, the ultimate question really isn't whether algorithms will destroy art, it's how this new partnership will redefine human creativity entirely. Harold Cohen taught Aaron to draw way back in the 1960s, and today, millions of us are learning a whole new visual language alongside AI. The tools change, but the human drive to create is permanent. So the real question we are left with is this. When the machine can perfectly execute any vision in a matter of seconds, will human imagination expand to fill that limitless canvas, or will we lose the struggle that gives art its meaning? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep creating, and I'll catch you in the next one.